can get the camera to work, that would be nice. Hello camera, there you are. Okay. Are we live? Let's see here. Yes, excellent. Okay, let's continue. We left off with a new task. And that task is to create keyboard shortcuts in order to start our recording, stop our recording, and more importantly, play our recording. So let's take a look at our task board here. If I can get it up and showing, here it is. Our to do is we're gonna create a keyboard shortcut for start, stop, and play. Okay, and that seems simple enough. We estimated the difficulty to be 4 for this story. So it shouldn't take too long, maybe an hour, maybe 1 hour and a half, maybe 2, but hopefully not. So let's start and see where we get today. So how are you going to do that? Now in the game, the last thing we did was to set up a little tiny house here, so we can practice walking, basically automatic the process of running and leveling the running skill by holding down left shift, holding down W, and keep holding, and release when the stamina bar, which is the tiny bar down there, fills up. You resume again, and we'll want to loop this forever and ever. So we can basically run this application, run the game, start the cycle, and just go to bed. And by the time we get back, maybe level 50, maybe level 60, considering how incredibly slow it takes to level in this game, which was one of the motivation for creating an automated leveling application. But the application itself is not made for this, it's a more general application. But this is where at least I want to test it with. So this is basically our testing game. So let's see here. Let me move some windows here and there so we can get a big IntelliJ window up on the screen here. So how are we going to do this? We created the controller API, that's fine, but we also want to create shortcuts, so we simply just press the keys. How are we going to do that? We will need to run a listener, and that listener will have to be running before we even start our recording. Currently we have a macro key listener which we activate when we start recording, and then we remove it once we stop recording. So we don't currently have any listener that is always running, so we want that. We want a listener that's always running, and we may even want to combine that so they use the same listener. But I am wondering whether or not that is a less or a more change-friendly way of doing that. I don't know. How are we going to do that? Let's just let's start by creating a new service for now. Let's create a sort of listener service or shortcut service. I don't know, something like that. We can rename it later. We can move this later, and we will once we get further into the project. Listener. I'll just create a listener package for now. And while we're at it, why not just move this down there in the listener package, and we'll create a listener. And this listener, what's that gonna be? It's gonna be the shortcut listener. I don't know, shortcut key listener, maybe. Let's try. Let's copy some code from the other one here, because we're gonna be using the same. Probably something similar at least. But then again, maybe we want to make a service that does all this. Let me think a little bit here. Currently we have a macro runner service that boots on startup because we're using Spring, and that means it's creating the beans for us. And this specific bean simply registers that we're going to use native hooks. So I'm not familiar with the details on this. I just know that's the way we need to do it if we're gonna get this to work. when we add the native key listener, that's when it actually starts listening. So this is the important part for now, this and the remove. But we simply want to add one, like from like immediately. So maybe we want macro runner service to be the one that registers the shortcut key listener. So one thing we can do is adding it in the constructor. So when we start application, immediately we're gonna run the shortcut key listener. But our friend Patrick here yesterday or the day before yesterday came up with the idea that perhaps we should use one listener and then simply well, handle it from there. And there is merit in that, definitely. And that way we could also stop and start a certain logic, certain listener logic, but I'm not entirely sure how I would go about that. Let's see here. I can get the window up here. Oh, there it is. Let's see. There has to be some. I'm sure this is a problem or a situation that has occurred a lot before with many people. Single listener handling multiple I don't know, events, something, I don't know. I'm looking for the logic, not the specific code. I'm just looking for how you would handle that. Would you just make a super listener, the one listener to rule them all, and then simply do checks, like if recording has started, okay, you're gonna, you will react to these specific keys. I suspect that may be overdoing things, at least right now. So for now, I'm thinking I'll just stick with having separate listeners. Keep it on their own little worlds. We don't have to mess around with that too much. And if we get problems with that for any reason, perhaps performance issues or something like that. Now, I don't expect that to occur in this situation because we're not doing really very heavy work. We're not doing like infinite loops or anything like that. We're simply using events like by using the listeners. So let's create our listener here. I'm gonna copy paste this because we want to use the same one. We want to use a key listener. So let's implement that for our shortcut key listener. Let's see, let's implement some methods here. What do we want? I guess pressed, I think is what we want. Yeah. So when we are pressing certain buttons, we want to start recording. What buttons do we want to use? So if I go in the game right now, what buttons can I safely press, to start and stop recording without messing up anything? Let's try Shift F1. No, that's I have a shortcut there already. Okay, let's try maybe Control F1. Okay, that seems good. Nothing's happening. Control F2. Okay, that's apparently the game has something there. Maybe I can just press F2, F3, F1. I don't know. It's definitely a F9, F10, F11. Here we go. This key does not seem to be in use anywhere, so why not just set that to those? F9, start recording, stop recording, and play recording. So stop recording. Sorry, start recording. Actually, the start and stop recording can be the same button when I think about it, so why not do that? So the start and the stop recording is the same button. So then we just need two shortcuts. And the second one will be the play our recording. And this is just for now. We definitely want to change this because we want to be able to loop things. We will need an interface if we want to work with this a bit easier than having to use API calls to send information such as enable loops equals true or something like that. So let's see how we're gonna do this. Okay, so if the key event is F9, F9, yeah, F9. Then start or stop recording. But we also want to make sure that we don't press the same by holding down. I don't want the key to trigger itself before we have released the key. So I want to store the keys we're holding down in a similar manner as we're doing with the macro key listener. Here we have a press raw code list because actually, you know what? I recall after changing the version for our library JNativeHook, the native key typed worked again. And if typed is what I believe it is, basically the entire sequence of pressing and clicking, then that would be way more beneficial for us because we want that basically. So let's try it out. I'm gonna log something here. I'm gonna add the SLF4J annotation here. Get this to work, that'd be nice. Log warning. Something got typed. And let's see if we can actually get that on the screen here. Get raw code. Key event dot get key text, and this will be a more readable description of what we actually clicking. Let's play this here. I will have to add this, by the way, before we actually run this. Let's add that. Did we add that here? No, we did not. So let's do that. Let's how do I want to do this? I simply want to make a new. Wait, for now I can just do that. A new shortcut key listener. I definitely not want to do that later on, but let's just test this and see if it works the way I hope it works. So when I press F9, it should hopefully log that F9 is pressed. Not when holding down, but when the action is actually pressed. If I can get away. Wait, what's that? Multiple. Let's try. Okay, F9 does not work. But I can type letters. So maybe. Actually, yeah, okay, typed is just typed. It's letters when you write something. So F9 is not writing something. So that means that will not work for us. Let's stop this and let's manage our own key presses. But because we have the same logic here and in the other class, we can hopefully extract that out once we get it to work. So let's just remove this. We don't need this anymore. Let's add the key released method. So how are we gonna manage this? Let's just copy the list of the raw code list, pressed raw code list. But there, let's take a look a bit at the logic here. One pet peeve of mine is that the current logic is a bit overcomplicated. I mean, I'm sure it could be written better in a more readable fashion. So if the key is not already pressed, then you add it to a list for whatever reason. That is not not explanatory by reading this code just yet. And then you record a macro action. Now these two lines and this one and this line is just for the purpose of checking if you're pressing a key, clicking a key, if a key is being clicked. So how are we going to do that? Perhaps we will make a separate method. Actually, hold on. Yeah, remove press key. When do we know when a key has been clicked? We know a key has been clicked when a key press and key release have occurred. Perhaps we can create a separate method to handle that logic. Let's think a little bit there. Okay, let's pretend this did not exist just for a moment. how would I, if I were to type it out, how would I want to write it? If you were to read something, how would you want it to be read in order to be able to understand what's happening here? Is there a way to know the intention at this point? I don't think there is any way to know the intention before the key has been pressed and released. And the reason we're recording it only once is in order to get the timestamp of when you're holding it down. You don't want to keep getting the same key pressed over and over again until you release it, because you don't care about how long you're holding it, you just want to know when you started holding it. And then, only then, when it's released again, then you will release it. And I'm curious why this library would choose to keep looping it. That is something I do not understand, and it does not make any sense. So in a way, what I would like to do is, I would like to create perhaps an annotation. Just to hide away all the nonsense logic we don't care about. Because there'll never be a situation I would want to know if a key W has been pressed and been pressed again and again and again after another. There's no situation that could happen. So let's play around. What if we were to make an annotation? What would we name this? Perhaps press once, click once, press once? I don't know, what should we name this? Pressing once, pressed once. Only press once. Yes, that's a good one, right? So let's create a aspect. Let's see if I remember how I did that here. Spring, controller, service. Let's create a separate package here. Let's name this as AOP. AOP stands for Aspect Oriented Programming, which allows you to use magic such as this, among other things. Let's create the only press once class here. And let me dig up some old documentation or guides I have written here a while ago, because I did work on this quite a while ago, and why try to resolve something I already solved here? What was his name? Okay. Let's see if I can get the page so you can see as well here. This is the company website and our blog. Did I not release it? It's possible I didn't release it actually. In that case, let me log in to my admin panel here so I can actually make changes, or at least get the information I need. Should probably release that once I think about it. Just give me 1 second here. For safety, I'm gonna black this out, just in case. Yeah, it's safe. Gonna log in. Actually, let me turn off the sounds. There's nothing worse with background game sounds playing. But I did turn it off, so let's just turn all the volume down here. I realized that after rewatching a live stream that the noises were very visible to you that's viewing this. Not as much as for me, but it was slightly annoying at least. Okay. Where is it? I found it. There we go. Yes. Okay, post. There we go. Here's the guide I did not release. Let's see here. Let me get this up there. Using Spring Boot aspect. But the code I'm looking for is. I should probably add this one as well and think about this. Add this dependency here. And just as a reminder, the reason I'm doing this, creating aspect, is so we don't have to care and worry about having to keep rereading the same code that's going to be used for handling the logic of pressing and releasing key. You don't care about pressing more than once. You want to press once and that's it. So I figured that this might be fun. Gives me an excuse to use this at least. So let's see. Let's open the POM file. Let's add the dependencies here at the bottom. Oh, it's fine. So let's create the annotation. This is the code I was actually looking for here. Where is it? There it is. So changes on interface. Add the annotation. Download this one. Just import all of these. And we don't need any URI or anything else there. It should be just fine the way this right now. Why is there a problem here? Oh, let's import that. There we go. Let's import the AOP as well. Okay, let's see here. Yes, the target is fine, it's fine, the rest is fine. Yeah, now we need the aspect class itself first. Let's make a new Java class. Only press once aspect. Let's see, let's add the aspect annotation. Let's add the component. Actually, do I even need Spring AOP for this? We'll see later. If I remember, I'll try to take it off and see if it still works. Actually, let's just do it now. I'm actually curious about that because it's a possibility I mixed the dependencies up here. Let's try and see if it works. Yeah, let's just copy this, I guess. Let's see. Okay, the around annotation will allow us to wrap around the method we're gonna put this annotation on. Yeah, we do need the dependency. That's good. I just wanted to check because I noticed it didn't import Spring Boot or Spring Framework. It was just it was something else. Closing this one. Okay, let's now import. Yeah, aspect J. Apparently that's a part of the AOP, Spring AOP. That's good. That's why the confusion arose. This is the annotation. We call this the only press once annotation. Copy it in here. And that should do it, I believe. Yeah. Let's do a test. Let's do some logging. I'm gonna log error level here and add a select for J. Hopefully logging will occur. This should be pretty fast, assuming where is it? Here, native. Oh yeah, native key. So I just have to write something once I started recording. Let's start recording. Localhost, start. So it's ready. Let's see. Now I'm gonna type A. Nothing's happening. I'll stop. Let's see what's wrong here. Macro key listener. Okay. Why is it not wrapping around? This is the method. Yes. Maybe I should debug. Because I remember something about logging didn't. Let's try to restart and see. I did run as debug, right? Let's just start again, just in case. I don't wanna risk wasting more time than what we have to. Okay, that's fine. Why is it stopping there? Yeah, it's lagging a bit now. It keeps doing that when I keep running. I can only disable that. That would be nice. Yeah, red one. There we go. It's running. A. It's not working. So let's find out why. While we're at it, let me move this just somewhere more convenient. I don't want to have to run it manually every time. So let's put it in the shortcut list. Shortcut key listener. That's fine. I don't know why it doesn't work. Maybe I forgot something. Let's look. Did I write something more about it? What else? What did I forget here? This one is class. Yes, yes. It's fine. Yeah, it should work. I'm a bit confused why it would. Wait. Did I add component? Oh, yeah, I did. Okay, so that should work. Hold on. Ah, screw it. Let's try. Find out what's wrong here. Oh, wait. It shouldn't matter, but let's change the name of the method at least. First ones. Am I importing the correct? Yes, it seems right. This seems right as well. I don't know. Why wouldn't it work? Let's try this. Just do another breakpoint there and see. Things online and it's not like we need them. We don't need them. So can we just slow? Okay, let me try to log here. The only thing I'll do is lay here next to you. We need to slow. Okay, this is working, but the annotation does not trigger. Why is that? Let's try to change it already. I don't think it should matter, but try just in case. Yeah, why doesn't it work? Okay, let's do some googling. Spring does not work. Let's see, what information do we have here? Yeah, I did that. We have it right there. Wait, yeah, it's an interface. Did I forget something else? Oh. We were on the run, rocking around the clock. Now all we need is right here in front of us. In front of us. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna open the window. There you go. Let's see. Why doesn't work? Around, yes, it's fine, it's fine. What could it be? Yeah. Let's choose. Yes, this is fine. First ones. Yes, public class, around. Wait, am I? Yeah, I'm importing the right one. Yeah, same one. It's the same one. What is? What am I forgetting here? Only forgetting something. What? Hold on. is this on? Yeah, it should work. It should be fine. Let's do a test here. Just fighting something, doesn't really matter. Yeah, it does start up, but for some reason it won't wrap around the method. And why is that? That's really strange. Wait, yeah, it seems right. It seems right. Let's see, let me move this to the side here. Let's get this up here again. Okay, what am I forgetting? I'm stumped. Yes. Attention is runtime, yeah. Alright, it's a method, that's where we want to put it, yeah. Public interface, yes. Yeah, that's fine, that's the way it should work. But why doesn't it? Do I have a type somewhere? Only press once. Only press once. Yeah, that's fine. That's correct. That's the way it should be. When we add rest log, yes. Then it should go around the method. Yes, that is. Wait a moment. Could it be because it's a listener? Would that have any effect on it? That is a possibility. And if that's the case, then what we have to do is wrap around another method on it. Around. Or not around, but within, I guess. So let's go to our listener. Let's go to a shortcut key list. Let's make a new method. Call this the public. Public. I don't know. Oh. It doesn't really matter. You just need to wrap another method in here and see if it triggers inside here. Because this should work on public methods. Period. I mean, it should. Hold on. Wait a moment. Realization here. This is not a component. A Spring component, I mean. Okay, before I make this into a Spring component, I'm gonna try to just call this method and see if this here triggers. Doesn't look like it. Yeah, it may be because it's not a Spring component, and if that's the case, I will have to make this a little bit different. So instead of adding this here, I'm going to do it somewhere else. So perhaps this itself can be a component, and then we will use the constructor of this component for it to add itself. Can I do that? Am I allowed to do that? Is that against the rules? Let's see. But now it's a component at least, so hopefully that should have an effect. So let me add this back here again. I can comment this one out for now, and we will see what happens. Let me just make sure I'm logging something in here, and I am. That's it. Let's try again. Well, that's a disappointment. At least it works. That's good. So we can make it start itself using this method, and that's nice. But why wouldn't it wrap around? It doesn't make sense. It's very confusing. I'm going to do another test. I'm going to add that in the controller just to see what happens. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Let's put that in the play and see if it would work. If it works, then it means that I will have to do this slightly differently. Or just scrap the idea, I guess. There we go, errors, that's good. Let's see. Okay, it's working when it comes to an API, but not when it's called. Let's Google Spring aspect. Around, I don't know, all methods. Let's see what information we can find here about the aspect. Can I use something here? Combine the point cut with the point cut. I'm not familiar with point cuts. Not familiar just yet, at least. Yeah, I don't want this on the API itself. I want it. Why do I use component this one? Spring aspect add on inner class. I don't know. How to intercept inner class. Let's see. This might be something familiar or similar. Let's see what they have here. It only works on public method of classes declared as Spring Beans. Yes, and I believe we did that here, right? We made it into a component, but then again, maybe that alone is not enough. So what if I make a separate component for this? Okay, so the plan now may be changing again. Instead of making this do anything, let's just create something else that it will use. Which means this will change into something different. It will be basically a global key listener, I guess. Let's do that. Global key listener. Let's remove this one, remove that one, remove this method here. And let's take a step back. We are not gonna do anything in this. Everything this class is gonna do is point the things in the right direction. So let's create a inner class, a package. Let's call this a I don't know what to call this. Punk or something. We'll change that later. This is going to be the shortcut key manager. Maybe this is gonna manage the shortcut keys. So all the global key listener is going to do is going to tell these things that something has been pressed or released, and it's up to the managers themselves to choose if they are going to act on it. So let's go here again. Let's make this into a component first, because we need it to be Spring, and then the global key listener can take in a shortcut key manager, and that allows us to add this here. So if I just do a private final shortcut key manager, make sure we set that one when we construct this bean. When that is done, we can now just tell it that something's occurred. So now we pressed something, and let's just send the entire object in here. Let's do the same for released. And let's create those functions methods. And let's see if we can get this to work. And this is going to be a only press once type of manager, because I won't allow that. But do we even need to handle released? We do, don't we? But how do we know it's been released unless we can control them both? Let's see. God damn it. Maybe this is not the way to go. But let me try and see if it works. I just want to, out of curiosity, I want to know if this works. So this may be overcomplicating things by using an aspect at all at this point. So what I want to do now is just to confirm that this triggers, and this triggers this, and then we'll log something aspect. Okay, now it works. The aspect is working. Key press down, key press up. It works. And oh, you know what? Hold on. This can work actually, because this is a global. These are universal rules. When you're pressing key down, it doesn't matter where in the application you are, it's pressed down everywhere. And if that's the case, we can create some static variables possibly, or something like that. So let's go back here now. We know this works now. We are actually doing something. Let's create a private list. It's going to take integers, and it's going to contain the raw code. So what did we name this in the macro key list? We named this the press raw code list. So let's just copy that one and put this here. But here's the thing. Well, it is a global, so it should work actually out of the box without making it static. Let's try it out and see if we can get anywhere using this method here. Okay, so if the key we're getting now, yeah, actually that reminds me, we have to get the argument. Let's see if I have an example of that one. Let's see, join point. There was something here. Aspect get argument. Let's see. No. No. Here it is. Get args. That's the one. Join point. Get args. Wait, it's this one. Args. And the argument we want is the first one. So that's going to be a native key event because we don't know what it is. I think. Do we know? Only press once. I can also apply for mouse button. Input event. I guess I can use that one. Should be able to store the code anyway, right? Yeah, there's no button anywhere, mouse or otherwise, that you can press more than once. You have to release it first, so it should do something. Let's copy this one. Make sure it's casted correctly. If this is not null and length is greater than 0, I don't know. Let's try that. Actually, if this is the case, if it's null or the length is 0, we're just gonna return this one. If this is not the case, we are going to do the logic. Has argument. So if has argument, then proceed. Else we're gonna try to get the native key event. I should probably check if it's a native key event also, but for now let's just stick to this. then we are going to store the raw code. So if get or rather contains, if this contains native key event will get ID, not ID. Ah, crap. Okay, it needs to be key pressed or a native key event. Switch object arg. Let's see if I'm allowed to do this. Yeah, it's not allowed. Yeah, that's not allowed. So let's see. If the arg is an instance of native key event, is that the right class here? No. Then we do. Then we get that. And do the thing. Parse instead of native key event, we want to get the key event and check if it's already been pressed. And we will do the same for mouse when we get that far. So we can actually reuse this. We can use the same aspect, the same annotation over and over and over again. If this contains the native key event, get raw code. Or rather, if it does not contain, we're gonna add it. Add native key event, get raw code. It's just this into a integer. There we go. So if our list contains the code, does not contain the code, we add the code to our list so we know it has been pressed now somewhere in the world. If it has been pressed, then we don't want to do a thing. I'm simply not going to return join point. It's just gonna end. So this can actually be put here. And then I'm gonna remove this one. Or actually set null, probably, possibly. I don't know if this is going to work the way we want it to work, to be honest. It's a bit of an experiment to do this with this kind of work logic with the listeners. So if the argument is instead of key event, then we are going to try to get it. Hold on, why am I getting the arg twice? There we go. Then we're getting it, we are getting the raw code from it. We're gonna check if our raw code list is does not contain it. If it does not contain it, we add it to the list and we continue. Now if we keep doing this again, if it goes here again, we do the same check. If it then does contain, so this will fail, we're just gonna do nothing. Now I'm hoping that this is going to work the way I hope it works. There's no do nothing point. Let's just proceed. Yeah, no, there's nothing. I think no. Let's try and see. I'm going to log also here. Pressed the raw key event, get key text from the raw code. So we're gonna log it when we press it, and when we can press it, it's gonna log it, and I'm gonna add it to the list. I'm gonna proceed. One thing we'll have to do is we'll have to check for release as well. Right now we're just checking for the event. We don't care if it's released or what else. So we have to do that as well. So if our native key event.get ID is equal to native key event.pressed. So this is now the case when it's pressed. I'm just gonna put it in there. Else, if this is not pressed but released, we are going to do something similar, except we're just going to remove it. So if it is contained, if a raw code is contained, hold on, where's let me move that one out there. Oh, one too many equals here. If it's contained, we are going to remove it. And here's the thing, because we are trying to remove an integer, it's going to assume it's the index we're sending in. So I'm going to cast it as an object to tell this method that we want to remove the object integer. We're going to comment also released. And then it returns. And we could possibly put this out of here. Hold on, what's that? Let's just see if it works first and refactor afterwards. Let's see, look, shortcut key listener, we added unreleased and pressed. And this is called in the global key listener. This is the one that tells the manager if you have been pressing and releasing something. Pressing A. Ah, it seems to work. I'm holding down A. It works. Except this is logging a lot now, and that's because we are doing this. So let's remove that one. So it works now. Good. So now this, not this one. This is gonna keep listening. Like if you hold down, it's gonna keep triggering. But thanks to the annotation we have here now, we will only activate this once we hold down. And to demonstrate, I'm going to log an error. I like error for debugging, because they're very visible. So this is a success error. Pressed. And this is a success error released. There we go. I don't just write exceptions, I write exception to indicate success. Okay. Holding down A. Releasing. And it works just the way we want to do. And now we don't need to look at, nonsense code we don't care about. Because we know it's gonna trigger once, it's gonna release once. I can probably take it one step beyond and create an interface out of this and add the annotation on the interface itself and then have the managers implement the interfaces. Let's try that. I'm curious how it works. I have not done that before. This is definitely a good learning experience. Let's name this the manager. It's a bad name, horrible name, but let's just test it and see if it works. So I'm very curious to see if it works. Okay. Like that, remove the public because interfaces by definition are public. Hold on, wait a moment. I'm curious. Yeah, it shouldn't work. Yeah, good. Let's see if this works. Because if this works, that will be even more beautiful. Implements a manager. Wait, is that the correct manager? Yes, it is. Remove this. Let's just comment this out. Let's implement the methods. Let's see. Let's log the success error here again. Let's see if this works. So now we're hiding all the nonsense logic we would expect by default. If this works, I'll be really happy. No, it does not work. Ugh. Shame. But before I give up, I'm gonna do a quick Google search here, or duck search. Spring aspect on interface method. That would be really sweet if I could do that. Yeah, this is perfectly. This is exactly what I want, I think. Hold on. Oh, yeah, I'm Googling. Try point cut. What is point cut? I gotta figure that one out. Plus. I'm not familiar with point cuts. What is a point cut? Let's read a bit more, find more examples if there are any more. Support annotation of the method of interface in Spring. Let's see. Interesting. What's this? Spring framework. It's open. Shin title. When was this done? February 2019. Add this to triage in tracking. Mention May 2019. Why is this not done? Okay, let's take a look at this. Do this have a project here? It's public visible, no? This could be an idea for something you contribute to. I mean, it depends how badly we really want this feature right now, and it's not that badly wanted right now, but at least this is an opportunity if you want to, so let's see. Fusions? Question mark? What's that there? And forget about it now. We noted it down so you wouldn't forget it, but it doesn't work, so that's a little sad. So let's undo this now. We don't need this anymore. Add this here, add that there, remove this, and the reason the global key listener is not working with annotation is because it's more complicated than just a bean, which is sad. Let me try one more time. Maybe the weather changed and suddenly it'll work. I don't know. Let's just see what's up. It's not gonna work, but I just want to be 100% sure. The fire hot, but I just want to put my finger on the fire one more time just to be sure it's actually hot. Yeah, it doesn't work. Okay, let's go back here. So the way we solve this is by creating a listener that just listens and tells whatever interests whomever that it may concern that this is pressed and this is released. And we can do this also with the macro key listener, I suspect, but we'll see. I will leave that there for a little while, and we'll see how it how we're gonna do that. It's not very pretty, but make sure you don't have any log errors here. Okay, so if the native event get raw code is equal to native key event dot key event F9, then we're gonna stop or toggle. Else if how can I actually this is perfect to make a switch for. I'm not a fan of switches, but it will be more readable in this case. Or the case we have a key event BKF10. Okay. So but then again, we don't really care about pressed, we care about released. So let's put that up here. Or in or down there rather. Because we want the button pressed or rather released. It doesn't matter how long you're holding it. Just when you released, then you do it. So in this way, we can kind of ignore this. Unless, well, we'll see. I'm a bit unsure how I'm going to handle pressing multiple keys at once. In that case, you would care about pressed. But when you're clicking a key, you care about released. So that's definitely a challenge we may or may not have to deal with. Depends how far we get. So if we are pressing F9, we want to tell possibly the macro keys. No, not that one. Aha, okay. So this is the recorder. It's not just listener, this is also the recorder, and I want to change that. I want to put that out. I don't want that in here. Let's also comment out this. All this logic you see here now, we don't need. The reason for that is because we handle that in our new annotation. But this entire class now has to be restructured. So this is going to be, I don't know. This is basically where the logic is going to be. Shortcut. Key shortcut. I don't know. It's difficult to be sure what to name this here. And we need a macro recorder. We don't need manager at all. Just do key shortcut tracker, I guess. Responder. Why not? It's a little better, but you know. Words like handling, manager, and so on are really bad to use in coding because it doesn't actually explain what it is. I mean, it does something, but what doesn't do something? Let's see here. So this is where we're gonna move the functionality of recording here, which is this here. This method. I think this method is it. It's not a lot actually. It's very light when you look at it by itself. So we need the start time. The start time is done where? Do we need a start time? Here. Interesting. It's empty. That is really interesting. I gotta check that out. Did I Yeah, the start time is not set here anywhere. That is really curious. How? What? Oh, it is set. Oh, it's in the constructor, of course, of course, of course. Required RX constructor. Hold on. Yeah, it is set. But I realize, yeah, we gotta take a look. We have to think about this. How we're gonna do this. Let me start with this instead. Let me remove this. Remove this. Remove this. What we have here, we have pressed and released. Pressed and released. That's it. But in this case, we possibly need a way to handle state if we don't use the same method as before. Or actually, no, we can keep the same method. We just keep the macro key listener, and that's added when we want this to run. So this will be the same, except this is the one that's now going to be telling the class what to do here. Yes. Let's see. Oh, let me uncomment that while we're still using it. Yeah, let's create a macro recorder here. Ah, jeez. This is going to be many changes. Because the structure of the application keeps changing. Yeah, all we want to do is when this happens, we want to store it. So when we are pressed or released, we want to store it. So the same logic is going to be record key event, and then we send in native key event in here, and then we create a function, and that's going to be the same method for both, because all we're doing is recording the keys. Why do you keep trying to get AWT list? No one uses that. Unless you work with swing, I guess. Okay, so we have the list. Now this depends on when we start. And when we start depends on the constructor. So we create a final long start time in milliseconds. And this will force us to, when we use this class, to send in the start time. And then that will work. Change the name of that one. Change this, and change this. And that's it. Yes, perfect. That's it. This is the class that records what the keys are pressing once you refactor it. Nice. So hopefully, this works. So let's see. Let's go to the macro key listener here. This is the one that gets activated when we start the recording. So I'm hoping to not change too much. But the good news is now we don't care about this logic. We can remove the if and the extra method that does something. And all we care about now is the macro recorder, and that is something we're gonna create. When are we gonna create it? When this activates, so we can probably put it in the constructor here. Wait, no, well, heavy? Let's see, look here. Where's the start recording? New macro key listener, yeah, right here. So let's create a constructor here, so we can actually do some stuff. And I may even actually, well, maybe, let's see. New macro record. This requires this one. I don't think we need this in the in here anymore. We can remove this as well. Now we only care about when it has been pressed, and I'm hoping we can put everything in one listener at some point. Now I'm just trying to I'm trying to make simple changes without changing too much, but it's still a lot of changes. And now we don't need this, we don't need that, we don't need this, we don't need to check if a key is already pressed, because we are already handling that in one class, and that class is a aspect. Now all we care about is the logic itself. We don't have to worry about if it's already pressed 2 times, 3 times in a row, because that cannot happen. The beauty of code. Let's see. It will be better, don't worry. We will keep refactoring. I will refactor the hell out of this application. While we go. Heck, I might decide to do it all over again on a whim. We haven't started with this, what we were really going to start with today. We ended up by refactoring the entire recording logic, making it the classes way smaller than before. Let's see here. Macro runner service. Let's see. This is the one that. Why does it store this? Why does it store this? We don't need to store this anywhere, do we? So let's. Oh yeah, for testing. Possibly. But your save. It doesn't work, because even if you set that before starting the recording, it's not gonna work. Because we are starting the yeah. Okay, if I stop recording, am I using this? No. If I play recording, am I using this? No. Okay, I can remove this. I can remove this because we don't care about this anymore. Let's put it in there for now. What else? Now, I'm sure we're breaking plentiful tests now. It's fine, we'll fix those. So now when you start recording, you're creating a new key listener and set the current time, and you add it immediately. That will cause the key listener to activate right away. So when we then start pressing or releasing buttons, it's gonna send in to our macro recorder class, which has the beautiful annotations that prevent us from triggering more than once. So once pressed has been pressed, it will not be pressed again until we have released the same key. The beauty of it all. Let's see here. Am I using this? Yeah, I should be using this one. Yeah, we definitely need to fix it. We need to return this because once this is has ended, we need access to this one. Let's make it a getter. Let's go out and see how it's used from the listener. It's not currently used anywhere, so let's remove this one actually. Let's remove this one, and let's create a getter. And that getter is going to public list macro actions. Get. Hold on. Wait. Let me think. This is just a listener. Let me go a bit. Take a step out here again. Once you start recording, we'll keep recording until you stop recording. But before you stop recording, you will need to get the list somehow out of the listener and the classes that do the logic. We don't want them itself to do something with it. We just want it to do the job of storing it, record. That's it. Don't play it, don't do anything, just record it. So when we're done, before we exit it, actually we can probably do that after we exit it. After we exit it, we ask for the list. Please give us the list so we can use it when we start playing recording, because we go out here again and we go in here once we start playing, right? So let's create a list here for now. Let's just create a list, private list, macro action list. Yeah, that's fine. So when we stop recording, we're gonna populate that with them. We're gonna ask the listener to give us the resulting list. Unless we also keep the macro recorder and send it into the listener, so the listener knows what to do with it. This is another level we can probably take out, turn it into a interface, and use the same with the global key listener, or rather the key shortcut responder. We can create a generic we can keep reusing as the listener. So we will have one listener class we use and send in a manager, what do you call this, that will actually work with listener. It's interesting. I'm gonna note this down so I don't forget this, because I'm not entirely optimistic I will finish this in today. Let's see here. Let's see. And the difficulty of this have increased probably to 15 actually, because we're not just creating a keyword for the start, stop, and play. We're also restructuring the code in order to remove duplicates, and we're gonna do the testing and refactoring before we're done with this. Create keyboard shortcut. That's the last thing. Because, and then again, testing, refactoring. So those is what we're gonna do, or what we're working on right now. As a result of the new knowledge we gained throughout this research. Let's see. Let's think a little bit here. How are we gonna do this? Let me get my share. Okay, let's see here. Git macros list. Oh, that's an idea. Ideas just keep pouring in. Something neat I could do for the live stream is actually listing up like a little text somewhere on the screen what I'm doing. That would be sweet if I could do that. Like, this is what I'm working on. So people dropping by know immediately what I'm doing. So I can spend some time thinking while they read. The reason we're keeping this one is so we can remove. We want to add, we want to remove. Add, remove. But yeah, this is a service for the running the macro. That includes start, it includes stop, it includes play. And when we start, we set up a macro key listener. We set it to be the current time, which is the start time. And then we add it, so it begins the job. When it's done, we stop the listener. We want to get the results from the listener. What I'm wondering if I want to add the macro recorder as well on this level. Because if I do, I can simply get it. Instead of having to ask listener, ask the macro recorder, I can just ask it directly. Like, I'm the service. I control all the employees here. Like you. Okay, they work together, but when they're done, I ask him directly. I don't ask you to ask him, right? So I think that would make more of a sense to do that. So when this is done, we want to get the macro action list, and we will set that to our macro action list, right? And once we have that, we can do whatever we want with this when we start play recording, and we won't have to add further complications in the code. But since we now own this, we will not create this in here. It means we are gonna send it in as part of the constructor parameters. Arguments. Parameters. Argument. So let us just set it here. Do we need the time now? I don't think we need the time anymore, so we can remove that as well. Yeah, that makes it even easier. So now the listener is just telling the macro recorder when to press and release. So now comes another idea. Hello, Valheim mod? No, well, no, not directly. We are writing code that is going to be the application that is going to automate Valheim leveling. That's my motivation. But it does not mean it's only going to work for Valheim. It's going to work for everything. It's going to work for any game. It's going to work for any application. Anything you do on the computer, you can record what you're doing. And hit the play button and do that in loop and loop and loop. And later, if we get time, maybe we'll make it smarter. Maybe we'll make it recognize Windows. So it's definitely a... This live stream is more definitely aimed towards those interested in coding, development, and you know, heavy coding. But Valheim is my motivation for doing this. Because it takes so long to level. Like, you can keep running for hours and hours, and maybe you'll level 5 times, maybe 10 times, maybe 20 times. I think I ran 6 or 8. Yeah, Valheim bot, you can. That's a goal. But it doesn't have to be just Valheim. It can be anything. But I would definitely look into learning more about automating to that level of making a bot. That's definitely something I have been thinking about. Like, I'm curious. I want to know how to do that. Now, that does not mean I encourage people to cheat in games where it affects other players. I encourage people to cheat the hell out of single-player games if they want to. But I do recommend that they cheat after they have actually played the game, so they don't actually ruin the experience. Because once you cheat in a new game, you actually ruin the experience by getting everything. Let's just tab that down again and let's think. We have to go up a step now because we need to fix the issues. We have issues everywhere now. This we no longer need. The macro recorder is what we're gonna send in here. But before that, we will have to create it. So this macro recorder equals new macro recorder start time in milliseconds. So it keeps track of the start time. But this is an awkward way of doing that, isn't it? Because now you're creating a new object every time you're starting it. You're basically deleting the old one, creating a new one. Wouldn't it be nice if you can just keep the same one over and over? Because all this does is, well, it adds to a list. So maybe we can create a start-stop function. But then again, maybe that's overdoing it again, because then we create more code that we don't need right now. Like, we don't need more code. So I guess it's okay for now. Not happy with it, but it's okay. It's okay. We can live with this. So get the time, create the macro recorder, send the macro recorder to the listener so the listener can keep track of the keys and tell the macro recorder what to do. But what if we do it the other way? What if we change the code even further? Take it one step beyond and invert this? What if the recorder is the one that handles the listener, making the listener tell the recorder when the keys have been pressed? Is that possible? Probably. Because the listener, all it does, it just implements a native key listener, and the listener is activated by the service itself. But what if we can make the macro recorder own that also, so we don't have to hold too many hats at once? Wouldn't that be nice if we could do that? But after all, we are not going to worry about the playback inside the macro recorder class. Its responsibility is to handle the recording. And if it can also handle the listener, which keeps track of the keys being pressed, wouldn't that be nice? Let me ponder on this. Yes, that could work. And that would reduce the complexity of the code by doing that. Let's do some doodling, code doodling here. This is gonna be broken for a little while, but let's ignore that for now. This is fine and all. But what if this didn't exist for us? What if the service didn't have to worry about that? How can we do that? How can we remove that need? How can we remove these? And even this. What if all of this was in the recorder and all we did in the start recording is to tell the macro recorder to start like this, right? Yes. And when we hit start, it will create its own time. It is going to set up its own listener that's going to be feeding itself information and add itself as a listener. So what if we did this? We just told it to start. How can we do that? We will need to create this class. It has to exist. So let's make it exist by instantiating it. But this current constructor wants a start time in millisecond. We don't want that anymore. So let's remove that need. So when we start the application, it's gonna create itself. It's gonna create a macro recorder immediately. But it's not gonna start it, it's just gonna create it so it exists in the world. So when we press start recording, we can go here. And in here it would make more sense for it to do what it needs to do in order to start recording, right? So here it can keep the time. Possibly. Maybe it doesn't even need the time here. But let's just do it this way and see how we get further along here. And then we don't need this anymore because we have created ourselves. We can remove that altogether. And how can we get the listener to tell us when we want to trigger pressed and released? Can we send ourselves into this? Would that make sense, or would it break something? Would it create a recursion loop somewhere? Would it work? Because what this is going to do is, this is going to live its own life somewhere here. And it's just going to activate this and this whenever it feels like, basically. So it should, in theory, work, right? So let's add the listener as a variable here. And then you start it by adding it as a listener. And that should be fine. Now currently we don't need this anywhere else as far as I can see. No, we didn't need here. Okay, here we need it. Okay. Basically when we are hitting press and release. But this will not trigger until we get here. So let us now take a step after this. And let's look again. We now have a macro recorder that starts when we want to start recording. So when we want to stop recording, can we not just tell it to stop? Just stop, just do it. I don't care how you do it, just do it. So let's create that method and put that there. What was this? What did this do? This is where we try to get the list, the result of the recording. But let's not do that when we stop. We don't want to do more than one thing. That's the ideal situation. We want to do what the method explains we're doing, and we're stopping. Stop. Okay, we stopped. What now? The macro recorder asks. Well, that's up to us. What happens after we stop recording? Well, nothing. We stopped. But when we hit play recording, then we need information. Then we need a macro action list somewhere from someone. So let's get that one. Let's just copy this one, put it in here instead. It's already there, so let's remove that and let's delete this one instead. And let's ask the macro recorder to please give us a list. And it did. So now we got the list from the macro recorder in a separate method, which is play recording. So this is a step we need to do in order to play the recording. Then we start an executor service, which then will queue up our actions one after another with a delay which is stored in each macro action. And all that logic is handled in a macro recorder now. So if we go back in here, let's take a look here. When a key is pressed, we then trigger record key event method, which is identical with the released method. So we are reusing a method. In this method, we get in the key event that is given to us by the JNativeHook library. But before we use it, we make sure to get the delay, the time this has been triggered, the time it has been read, the time it's been pressed, since the starting time. So every key stores the delay relative from the start time. So when we queue everything up, all the events will be triggered at the same delay as it was recorded. And it's stored in a macro action wrapper. And I call it a wrapper because it's currently wrapping a native key event, which is the real data we are interested in. And then it added to our list. And this is the list that we ask for later when we want it. But right now we're just doing what we expect it to do. We start the thing, we stop the thing. Don't do anything else but to start and stop. And if you go up again, let's see here. Our server is now just telling it what to do. We don't have to ask for things to do ourselves, we just tell it to do that because it has to do with the recording. So what about play recording? We're now asking for the list. We're creating a schedule executor service, and we just make sure to schedule all the actions pretty much at once. If you had a million actions, this would probably not work because you're storing the delay since the start time. So I suspect there may be issues there, but I think that's a scenario that is not going to happen with humans. As long as humans, us, people are using this application, this cannot happen. Now, if you were to use a piece of code to a macro to create a macro, then things would probably go wrong. Let's take a look here. We have a method to schedule the macro action here. Let's see, I'm using it in a test, and that's why I have put it out there. I think it's gonna work, but I suspect we have broken many tests now, so I'm a little afraid to try now. Let's see if we can change the time of the game today here. If I can get some cheat code. Valheim cheat codes. Because now we just want the daylight so we can actually see what we're doing here. We can find something, that would be nice. Day food. There it is. So F5 EMA cheater, I think. Food 0.5. There we go. Now it's daylight. So let's see if we can test it here. Now we have an error here, so let's find out what that is first. Yeah, the tests are broken beyond repair right now, so I'm hoping I can kind of hide it until we can test this manually. Yeah, I suspect it's not gonna work. Okay, let's fix the test first. Can we ignore the test? Let's see. Can I ignore the test? Let's see if I can ignore it. let's do this. This. Try again. Okay, it seems to work. Let's open our website or web page where we're gonna run our API. Or rather, let's just run our API. So we don't have any interface yet. Let's see here. Just preparing both of them. So when I press start, I'm gonna start running in the game. Holding down left shift, holding down W. Running, running, running. Stopping. Let's wait until it gets the stamina back here. Now let's run now. Let's stop a little bit. And let's us run again. Let's move back. Let's jump. And we'll stop. By running this API. Stop API. Let's try to play this and see what happens. If it works, it's gonna work as before. It's gonna do what we just did. Minus the mouse movement. Moving back from the keyboard, no hands. Look, mom, no hands.
I remember the days, always at the same place.
Run. Haha, see? It's working just the way we expected it to do. It's recording and playing back the events. And now it's gonna go back a little bit, it's gonna jump. Perfect. See? That's how it works. Pretty easy, right? Couldn't be easier. But we're far from done. I mean, well, we're not far from done, but we are quite a bit away from done here. Because what we did today, we didn't actually implement the key presser. We basically refactored based on new knowledge. But the result from this is, I'd say the code has vastly improved. It's much smaller, it's more concise. It does what it explains it does. What else? We even added a aspect to remove a bunch of nonsense code. Look at this messy code. Imagine having to deal with this on your listeners when you wanted it to run only once. Well, not the listener, but the class that the listener sends the information to. So that's a good thing. I don't like this code though. It's a bit messy. So if the arg is instantly the key event, but we'll keep building on this. Once we start working with mouse events, we can add a check to see if it's a native mouse event and do the thing there as well. But for now, let's leave it like this. This is fine. It's okay. We're not gonna look at this probably ever again. Once we keep developing, with the exception of native mouse event. So let's fix the test now. Let's start with the macro key listener, I guess. Let's see what we have here. So what does a macro key listener need? It needs a macro recorder. So let's create a macro recorder. Let's see here. Whew. Okay, our time is almost up. I'm gonna be doing this for about 10 more minutes, and I'll end it for today. And tomorrow I will be probably a bit late because I have a work meeting, and I don't know how long that's gonna last. I don't know how long that's gonna last, so we will see. Let's see. Simulate key events. How is this gonna work the same now? That probably broke a lot. Okay, this is just creating the native events we want to simulate, and that's fine. Yeah, that should work actually. Yeah, we're simulating the listener now. We're manually pressing. And when we press this, the macro recorder is going to save and store the things we want. Yeah, this should be fine actually. So let's go up again. Let's take a look here. The macro recorder needs nothing when it's constructed, so it's just empty. That's good. But when you get here, we want to get the list, so let's actually get the list there from the macro record itself. And if we're lucky, that's all we have to change here. And that would mean our tests are pretty well written, because you don't have to change as much as you would expect, even though we did a lot of code changes in the classes, right? Honestly, I'll be surprised if it works. But it will be a happy surprise. The happy surprises are always good. Macro recorder. There we go. Let's see what happens. Oof, everything burns here. Let's see here. Null pointers everywhere. What's null? What's null here? What's a null point? Yeah, what's this? How is this set? In the start, we have to run start first. So the macro recorder has to run start. Where's start triggered from? From the service itself. But now we know, or now we change, so the macro recorder owns the listener. So it would make more sense to change this, change the direction of this a bit now. Unless we manually set this. It creates the listener, it adds listener, but we don't want this actually. Yeah, we don't want the macro recorder to do the start. Let's go back. Let's look at the test of it. See how we can mock all this. Now the problem is that when we try to call the native key pressed, it runs the macro recorder and it tries to use a time unit that doesn't exist. So like we did before, we're gonna do a quick hack for testing purposes, add a setter to this. We can set this directly from the tests. It's not optimal, but if it works, good. Set time millisecond, just add a time right now, it doesn't matter. This is not so important, luckily. So let's try it again. I'm gonna do the same at the bottom here, right to there. Let's see if we get something green for once. One out of two, that's not too bad. Let's see, what do we have here? Expected size of 1, which was 3. Why is that? Let's see. We're pressing key 3 times. Macro recorder then returns a list of 3 eyes. Why is it 3 and not 4 though? Oh wait, no, sorry. You're filtering here, that's why. The stored works, but not the double pressing. It seems to be triggering from the tests. Let's take a look here. Simulate a key event, you then run native key pressed, you run pressed, but this does not occur now because we are no longer in a spring. It's no longer a bean, I think. So for this to work, we've had to change this to a integration test. So is there a way we can fix that? Let's see here, what can we do? Well, we have a macro recorder. I could probably mock something here. But what? Released and pressed. Okay, I can mock those. Probably. But it may also be that because of our changes now, we need to invert this. We need to make a test for the macro, not for the key listener. And if that's the case, how are we going to do that? Let me comment out this one and let me change this a little bit. Let's make a new test. I will rename the test class if this works as expected here. Test macro runner. But once again, this is not an integration test. This may not work because we rely now on the aspect, and that is a pain to deal with right now, I realize. create this. What does it need? It needs nothing. It will create its own things once we run start. But we don't want to run start. We know the events work. And the events will call this. So we don't need to run start. We can just set this and not this. And then do this. And check the list itself. Yeah, we don't need to do anything. We just check the list. Okay, so let's try again here. Pressed native key event. So this is the part we're gonna simulate a key press. So we're not gonna use the listener at all for these tests anymore. Because the macro is the one that owns this now. We want to test the macro to make sure it stores the correct keys. We don't care about how the listener's logic works because that's a dependency. Because all we do is doing the pressed and release here. So it doesn't make sense to use the listener anymore. But the idea is good with this. But alas, we need to make changes. So the code is not as good as I was hoping for. Let's see here. I'm going to change this. Let's simplify this a little bit. Let's take a look at this now. We have a superclass which creates a list now, right? But we don't do this anymore. Do we need macro list like this? If you mark, then yes, we do. I don't want to mark this. This is actually a well, do I want to mark? That's good. Let's just try. Let me copy this one. Do I have a build native key event here? I do have. Build native key event. Build native build a Let's try. Oh, it is the same. Okay. Let me just get this. So this is gonna return the native thing. So it would be like this then. If I were to simulate this press, it would look like this now. So let's try this. With this. Not the fastest way of doing this. For the fourth. Wait. Yeah, fourth. Jeez. Actually, this is probably faster. Doing it like this. What's my name? Pressed, released, pressed, released, released. Yeah, this is way faster. Why did I do this? Now we are simulating key presses. Wait, hold on. No. Released. Hold on. Yeah, this is right. And the reason we have to send this in because we are creating a native key event. So let's try that. So this should be the same as this, pretty much. Except now we're using the macro recorder and not the listener, because the listener no longer owns anything. Now the macro recorder owns the listener. It's the boss. When this happens, how do we verify? Simply by getting the list. Macro action resulting macro action list equals macro recorder. There it is. So what we have to do now is verify that this list is the same as this. Let's change this though. Macro action. Yeah, there we go. Let's see if this works. I'm 1 minute over time, but jeez. Let's see. Null pointer, yes, because I did not set the time. I forgot about that. Set start time. There we go. Let's do another run, and now it should work. I just hate leaving the stream without, you know, having something. Let's try. Okay, it works now. So let's do the same. Remove this one. It's the same test, except now it's a reversal of ownership. So the good news is we could reuse the code. I don't have to write any new code. So let's now uncomment this. Let's do the same changes as we did for this. Any test. I'm gonna finish the test before I end today. Test key pressing. I don't know. Let's make a brand name here. So let's copy this. Let us copy this. Let's duplicate these a few times so it's the same as this. And it is. And let's now copy this, which is the verification that tests behaves the way we want it to behave. Let's get the result in macro action list. That resulting macro action list is the one that's gonna match the expected output. Now I can remove this, run all of this, and hope for the best. Let's see here, what's wrong? Was 3 in wait, it's 3 because this annotation is not working. So let me take a little look here. I'm gonna search a little bit. Let's see here. Spring aspect. I don't know. How to mark an aspect. Okay, let's see, can I do this? I'm currently working on some annotation tool using Aspect.J because the tool should be technology independent as far as possible. I'm not using Spring for injection. I want my expert unit tested. Okay.
Somehow I woke up out in Beverly, fucked up, smelling like that bourbon. I end up alone, I'm not certain.
Seems to be a bit over complicated. Now I cannot easily test this, it seems. Mocking aspect. How did he do that? What do you mean? I mean, you're creating your own aspect basically, you're trying to override it. Can I do that? Am I allowed to do that? No, wait, that. But if I do that, I'm not actually testing it, so it doesn't make sense. Let's change the test a bit further. That means we cannot test that because this will not run unless we change it to an integration test. So let's try that instead. I'm gonna copy this. I'm gonna paste. Actually, I'm gonna rename this first. Macro. What's the name? Macro recorder. Macro recorder unit test. Now this part cannot be tested, so let's create a new one. Macro recorder integration test. So now we need to use Spring Boot. So Spring Boot test run with Spring Runner. Let's create a test. Let's see if context is loading here. This, okay. Let's go back here. Let's try to put this, pull this out here and put it in here. All this does is verify the Spring content loads. There may be times you see this empty test, which doesn't make sense, but it just checks that Spring is actually running. So let's extend the test class here. Let's keep pressing. We get access to this one, and let's not do that here. This needs now to be handled elsewhere, I think. Well, I mean, maybe it works now because we are running this as a bean. So let's try it and see if it works. Did I forget something? Huh? Oh. Typo. There we go. Let's see if it works. I'm wondering if the bean loads now. It should load, but I mean, who knows? Tests are unpredictable when you deal with the aspects here. It's 3. Why? Okay, let me debug this and see if we get in here. Because I'm pretty sure we don't. Wait, if has argument. If it does not have argument. There we go, typo. It did do the right logic, but the method name was wrong. Let's try again. Now I'm running as debug. So if this works, it should get in here. It does not. Which means the methods is not triggering this. So how do we do that? Is there, can I call this directly? Can I just yeah. Bring auto test method with aspect. Let's see if we can learn this today. Okay, let's not test this and let's change this, because this functionality is not testing the macro recorder, it's testing the annotation in hindsight. So let's change this also. Let's change this to the only press. Actually, let me delete this class. Let's create a new test class from the aspect and see if we can make a test for that. Because that should cover that we don't press more than once. For this we don't need any spring, so let's just use the Mockito JUnit runner class. Create a test. Void test keys only pressed once. That's what you want to test. Test keys are only pressed once. So only press once aspect. Let's see, what do we need to mark here? In this method, we're gonna send a join point and a annotation, I guess. I'm a bit unsure how that's gonna work, so this will be interesting. So let's try to call that and see what happens here. Only press once. Only press once. Oh no, let's see what happens. Let's see. And handle exception. Okay, let's add a trouble to the signature. Let's run it and see if we can something happens or not. I don't know. Good pointer, yeah, it's expected. That's fine. Good point. Yeah, this cannot be null, by the way, in a real situation. Let's create a join point. Let's mark it. Join point equals mark. Join point. Yes. Make it static, so we can remove the unnecessary. So when our join point get args, I guess. Let's see. What do we need first? We need args. Yeah. When you try to get args, we're gonna return a array list of objects. Or yeah, why not? Then return. Let's get an empty array list. It doesn't really matter, but it needs to have a size. Can I do this? Am I allowed? How did I do this? It's been so long. Size of 1. Okay, I'll do that. Actually, let's try this. I'm curious to see if this works. Wait. Why is it proceeding join point? Okay, proceeding join point. Okay, hit play again. Okay, it's green. Good, it works. That's all we wanted to know. So how are we going to test the functionality of this? We need access to this list, the pressed raw code list. This is where the logic really resides. But we also need to return something when we try to get the first argument. So let's make a list actually. Let's actually make an object. So the list we're gonna make object size of 1 args equals new object, and we're gonna create a native key event equals new. Wait, is that right? Native key event? Native key event? Yeah, native key event. Build. Let's extend the testing here. Extend test. Test key pressing. There one. Build native key event. The key event is pressing I. Native key event dot pressed 1, 2, 3. Right, so we're pressing it 3 times. Well, we're not gonna do it once. We're gonna have to do a loop or something. We'll create a function to, you know, reuse code. Did I do this? How did I do this? Jeez, it's long. So rarely do we use list arrays anymore. I guess we can use, yeah. It's fine, this one? No? One line, I want a one-liner. How did I do that? Just did up, array, yeah, it's fine. Oh wait. I need to cast it? Oh, screw it. God, it's been so long, I don't know how to make arrays anymore. Holy crap. This would that be easier? Ah, there we go. Holy crap. Good thing I'm no longer at school having to learn this. That's it. So then return this one. So that then we should it should work. So when this, hold on, wait, yeah. I get there. And again, mostly for testing purposes. Only reason it exists. So only press expert, get the raw code list. This is a list of integers, I believe. Let's see here. What's not working? Of course, it's the damn AWT list that keeps getting imported for whatever reason, even though it's never used. Why is it first? Can I like block this? Can I don't know. Okay, assert that this list contains exactly the object. This one. I don't know if this is gonna work. Nah, it's gonna work. Actually, just do this. Get 0 equal to this one. It's equal to work when the. That's right. There we go. Oh, good, it works. So if I were to do A or something, it's gonna fail now. It should. I'm just testing to make sure. Yeah, good. So it works. Okay, so now we can test a key press, but we have to loop it. We have to actually clean this up a bit so we can get something readable here. So this is creating a test. When this is the key we're pressing, and then we mock the key returning, and then we send it in. So this is the action, this is the test itself. And then we verify at the end. So what we can do is, I guess we'll create a method to do this. And this is going to take in a key event, PKI. Put that in here. Yeah, good. So what we now still accept, we expect the same key event here, so it should still work. Unless I made a mistake somewhere. Yeah, it works. Okay. So now, if I were to run this twice, it's gonna be the same, but we also have to sort the size here. Size has size 1, right? That's the way it should be at least. Actually, hold on, let me just do this. Let's see if I can get this working. Yeah, it's still good. So it has the size 1, and that's what we want. So let's make a new test there. The reason I'm making a new test is so we can have multiple test key pressed multiple times, expect once. Expect one result, I guess. Test key pressed once, expect one result. You may ask why I'm using underscore in a Java language. That's because in unit testing it's very common to add underscores in order to provide a more descriptive method for the test. What you want to avoid is having this thing. It's called a comment. If you can avoid it, that is. Okay, let's try multiple times. How do we do that multiple times? We have to do this multiple times. So this action itself will be the press key. Yes, we're gonna replace that, one thing I realized now, we can add this outside here. And we can add a before. And what this is going to do is it's going to initialize this on each test. Like so. So we can remove this from the test on all the tests. We don't need that anymore. And now it's more readable to see what we're doing. We're pressing once this. Wait, we're not done. Remove that one. Remove that one. Let's add the key here. We'll change that to take in the correct and expected key. And here we're gonna change this to take in the key event. And this is gonna go right here. And that should be it. Let's hit runs once again to the same test we did before. It works. Let's now try this one, which has the same code. Let's try it both at the same time, just to make sure everything works together. And let's add more key presses. Now we have pressed this 3 times. So hopefully that should result into 3 stored keys in the aspect class right here. So let's see. Wait, what? Yeah. This is wrong because we are not. Yeah, this is right. I mean, we're expecting size 1, even though we're pressing multiple times. Now, if I were to do this, add an A, it's gonna expect 2 keys. And we expect the first to be I and the second one to be A. Now we're actually testing the functionality that prevents us from pressing the same key more than one when holding it down. So it makes more sense to add it in a separate test class instead of trying to test this functionality on top of macro action again. But we'll probably get to making a real integration test that's once we have more to work with. But now we know it works. We have tested this now. It works the way we want it to. So that's good. So we covered our aspect with the test. We covered, hopefully, the macro action. Macro action? Not the macro action. The listener. Where is it? The macro recorder. So that means these should be now below. What should I call this? I don't know. Tool, I guess. I don't know. We'll find a better name for this later. I'm just gonna move this here. We'll find a name. And the listeners will be a sub of the package the other side now, because now these are going to be where what? Go there. Refactor. There. So in our service we have our macro runner service. Oh yeah, what's this? It's one. I refactor it, but it doesn't recognize it, so I have to rebuild, I think. Let's try rebuild project and see if that works. Sometimes IntelliJ does not recognize that we move packages. Okay, let's try restart and invalidate. That usually works. What time is it? Okay, I'm gonna end this stream for real now in about 7-8 minutes. 7 to 8 minutes. Because now it seems to be working, so I'm going to commit this once I'm sure that this is still working. But now we only have one tester. All we're testing now is that it's actually recording the keys we're pressing. But we're not testing that it doesn't add more than once, because that doesn't work here, because it doesn't. This is not the part that does that, because we're using aspect, which is a bit inconvenient, but it will be better for work later. Okay, now it's empty. Sorry about the noises. Okay, it's inspecting the code. It's taking a little while to think here, so let's leave it be. Okay. Everything is locked or something. There we go. Let's try to run all the tests and see what breaks. Everything is green. And just for the fun of it, let's add a coverage check in case I've forgotten something. And coverage checks are not something you should set as a hard rule. You should never set minimum 8%, because it doesn't mean anything. Code itself, the functionality you're adding is what tells you what you should test, basically, not the coverage. Okay. So we're not testing this one, because this is the part of the listener functionality, which is a dependency. So we're not doing that testing. And that's fine. What else? We are not testing the service. This is just loaded as part of the Spring context in all the tests, I believe. We are using the macro actions all the time. We are... Where's this running? Macro runner service. Here, okay. Let me take a look. Where is it? Macro runner service. It's under the Mac service. Wait, what? Macro action runner. Macro action runner. Here. So the action runner is a runnable. I guess I can make a new folder. I don't know. I don't feel it belongs into the macro folder. Even this, I don't feel it belongs here. What is this? This is just a container. It's a wrapper for the native key event. So these are events in a way. Let's set it to actions or action, because we may have multiple actions at some point, but maybe not. I don't know. I'm just quickly looking through this and see if there's something we can add. Yeah, it seems fine now. It seems we have covered most of it, except this, which we don't want to cover at all, because this here is run by a dependency. Yeah, it seems fine. Good. We're done. One last test, just to make sure. Let's do also a manual test just for fun, so we know it works. So next time I will actually start with the key recording, or the shortcuts for creating the shortcuts for the recording of the keys and whatnot. Let's see here. Try it again. Let's skip out this first. Start recording. Okay. Running, sprinting, jumping a little bit while holding down left shift and W and see if it works. Stopping. Going back, going forward, going back, going forward while waiting for the damn. I'm adding a lot of keys now, just test. And running. Stopping, running circles, jump, jump, jump. Hurry. Pitch. Let's see if it works. Stopping, and we're gonna play it and see if it works. Play. Okay, it's running, jumping and running. Yeah, it works. It records everything. It stops with all the keys. It goes back and forth while waiting. That's fine. Just as we did. You know? Yeah, it seems to work fine. This is good. So the real interesting test might be now to run a route or something. You know? But it works. So I'm gonna commit the work now as session 4, I believe we are at right now. So let's full screen this. Close this one. Status. Heavy refactoring, cleaning, reducing. Code density, I guess, is a good way to explain it. Density. So we have not added any functionality in this session. This was just pure refactoring as a result of new realized needs. And I can still see some room for refactoring, because the listeners here are almost completely identical with the exception of the global screen. So we might even be able to get that out and reuse a class for the same purpose, but we'll look at that another time. So let me just push this to origin as session 4. There we go. If you're interested in looking at the code we have written so far, you're more than welcome to go to github.com/evanscodia/ultimateme and find the appropriate branch right there. So thank you all for joining. I will probably be streaming tomorrow a little later than normal because I have a meeting. So in my time it will be probably around 3:30 or maybe even 4, and the time may even be slightly reduced. Thank you, Andrew Kelly. I appreciate that. Where was I? So yeah, that's our plan tomorrow. We're gonna continue, but slightly later. I'll post on Facebook on that, and I'll delete my current post today so people don't get spammed with live stream every day. People are gonna unsubscribe at this point. Who knows? But in 2 weeks, Godot engine. I decided we're gonna do Godot. Once this 2-week project is over, we're gonna go back to Godot engine, and we're gonna play around in multiplayer. Because I'm gonna start building the game of my dreams. The game I really wanted to make, but I've been creating lots of side projects to learn certain specific features, which I've been making tutorials of and whatnot. So thank you so much for joining, all of you, and have a good day. Bye bye.